My name is George. I always thought loyalty was a two-way street in marriage, until my wife, Lillian, showed me just how wrong I was. We've been married for 8 years. To the world, we look like the perfect couple, smiling at parties, posting vacation photos, and laughing over wine. But behind closed doors, something had started to shift. Subtle at first. A missed dinner here, a cold shoulder there. Then the distance turned into silence. Lillian said she needed a break, a retreat with some of her friends. To realign my mind and soul, she claimed. I wanted to support her. I always had. But something about her eyes that day didn't match her words. I stayed back, managing things after my father's passing. His death left me heartbroken, but also left me with a substantial inheritance. Land, stocks, cash. I was still grieving when Lillian packed her bags and left. What she didn't know was that my father never trusted her. He'd once told me, "George, people change when money's on the table. Watch her." I didn't want to believe him, but I listened. Quietly, I started setting up protections around the inheritance, legal barriers, secret trusts, things she couldn't touch. Still, a part of me hoped I was being paranoid. Until 2 weeks into her retreat, I got an alert on my phone. My shared account drained. Hundreds of thousands transferred to a private offshore wallet. I froze. Then I saw the name. Mike, not a friend, not a retreat leader. Her lover. And Lillian? She didn't even bother hiding it. There were photos of them on a yacht in Santorini. Matching robes, wine glasses, smiles too wide for just a retreat. But here's the part that Lillian didn't know. She didn't touch my real inheritance. She only stole what I let her see, because weeks before she left, I had already started the game, and I was 5 moves ahead. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. This was about justice. And the twist? She'd walked right into my trap. The night I discovered Lillian had emptied our shared account, I didn't react. I sat in the dark, staring at my laptop screen. The wine I had poured for dinner remained untouched, gathering dust just like the promises we once made to each other. Lillian, the woman I trusted with my whole life, the woman I gave everything to, support, comfort, love. She was my partner, my world. And now, she was sipping champagne with Mike, the man she once called just a friend from yoga class. But you see, I'd already started doubting her months before. It was small things, her sudden obsession with wellness retreats, her secretive phone calls, the way she kept changing her phone password. Then, one day, I overheard her whispering in the kitchen while she thought I was in the shower. "I'm just waiting for the old man to pass. Then we'll have everything. He's too naive to notice." She laughed. The voice on the other end laughed too. It was him, Mike. That moment broke something in me. But it didn't crush me. It woke me up. That same night, I visited my father's old lawyer. Quietly, without raising suspicion, we changed everything. The will, the asset distribution, even the title deeds, the properties I'd inherited. The accounts I showed Lillian, those were decoys, staged, controlled, and monitored. She thought she was draining my wealth. But in truth, she was stepping exactly where I needed her to. Let me explain. The money she stole was funneled to a fake joint account I'd set up months before. It looked legitimate, complete with fake ownership records and digital access logs. But it was actually tied to a legal trigger clause, one my father and I had designed years ago, just in case someone tried to commit financial fraud using my name. And when Lillian made those transfers to Mike's account, she unknowingly activated it. Legally, it meant she had committed theft. Not from me. Asterisk from the estate of a deceased man. Asterisk, which is a whole different level of crime. And I made sure to record everything. Each transfer, every login attempt, even the text she sent confirming the retreat dates. I didn't even need a private investigator. She handed me the evidence herself. But I wasn't ready to strike yet. No, I needed her to feel safe first. So I sent her a message. "Hey, babe, hope your retreat is helping. I miss you. Let me know if you want to fly out. She responded within seconds. I miss you too, Redheart. Just need some time alone to process Dad's death. Be back soon. I stared at the message for a long time. The gall she had to lie to me while lying in another man's bed, it stunned me. But I played along. Of course. Take all the time you need. I wrote back. Then I texted my lawyer and said 3 words. We're moving forward. The next day, I visited the safe deposit box my father left me. Inside, it was a document Lillian would never have wanted me to find. My father's handwritten letter. It read, George, if you're reading this, then you've seen her for who she really is. Trust the plan. Everything is already in motion. And remember, no one steals from this family and walks away free. It gave me chills. I knew what I had to do, because what Lillian didn't realize was that this wasn't just about stolen money anymore. This was about legacy. This was about blood. And as much as it pained me to admit it, she had chosen her side. And so had I. In the coming days, Lillian and Mike would learn something they never expected. I wasn't just the grieving husband left behind. I was the architect of their downfall. And the final stage of the trap was yet to begin. I spent the next 4 weeks in complete silence. Not because I was hurting, though I was, but because silence is where the seeds of consequences are planted. Lillian didn't know I was watching her. Not through a private investigator, not through friends, but through her own vanity. You see, she forgot she had synced her phone to our shared cloud account years ago. All her new photos, backed up. Her emails with Mike, accessible. Her chats, unfiltered. She talked about me like I was a joke. George has no idea. Poor man still crying over his dad's death. Will drain him, then disappear. Maybe to Bali or somewhere nobody asks questions. I bet he'll still be waiting with roses when I get back. She laughed in every message. But the more I read, the less I felt hurt and the more I felt resolve. I watched them plan how they'd sell off my supposed properties, which were actually held under a legal shell trust they had no access to. They even hired a broker. Mike was so confident. He sent in documents with forged signatures. Mine, that, my friend, was the final nail. Because forging legal documents, that's prison talk. And I made sure every one of those files was forwarded to my legal team. But this episode isn't just about them. It's about me. About how I finally stopped pretending. I call my lawyer again. Freeze the decoy account. Trigger the clause. Just like that, the $380,000 she thought she'd stolen was flagged as stolen estate assets. The financial institution launched an internal investigation immediately. The account was locked. Access was denied. And Lillian? Oh, she noticed, because she texted me 3 hours later. Hey, babe, there's something weird going on with the account. Did you move the funds? I just tried to pay for something and it said declined. I smiled at her use of babe. So predictable. So rehearsed. I waited 3 days before I replied. Oh, that? I forgot to mention. The estate filed an investigation. Turns out someone's been committing fraud. Authorities are involved now. I hope it wasn't you. No emoji. No warmth. Just the truth wrapped in warning. She didn't respond. But an hour later, I received a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Mike. I don't know what you think you're doing, he said, his voice laced with panic. But this is going too far. Just let it go, man. Be the bigger person. I laughed. Mike, the bigger person doesn't let thieves and liars walk away with his legacy. I'm not the weak one here. You are. I hung up, and that's when it really began. Because now, the mask Lillian wore was cracking. And panic? Panic makes people sloppy. For days later, Lillian came home. Unexpected. No call. No warning. Just appeared in the doorway like nothing had happened. She looked thinner. Pale. Eyes wide like someone who had seen a ghost. George, she said softly. I didn't know where else to go. Everything's falling apart. I stayed seated. Calm. empty coffee mug in hand, like I hadn't just prepared this exact moment. "You're not welcome here, Lillian." She looked shocked, hurt even, but I saw it now. Her emotions were performance pieces, rehearsed, plastic. "George, please," she begged. "It was Mike. He used me. He said you wouldn't notice." I didn't mean for it to go this far. I stood up slowly and walked to the door. Then I opened it. "I know what you meant. I read the messages. I saw the photos. And I know about the forged documents." She froze. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "That's why I've given everything to the legal team. You're under investigation. So is Mike. And by the way, there are warrants coming." I stepped aside. "You should leave, while you still can." She stood there for a moment, and then she broke. The tears were real now, not the kind for manipulation, but the kind that come when someone realizes their life is about to collapse. She ran out the door, and I let her go, but what she didn't know was this. This wasn't her punishment. It was just the beginning, because I still hadn't told her the one thing that would destroy her more than anything else. The real twist was still coming. After Lillian left the house in tears, I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel vindicated. Not yet, because she still believed she had gotten away with something. She still thought her only mistake was trusting the wrong man, Mike. She still didn't understand the real damage she'd done, not just to my finances, but to something deeper, to my father's trust, to my love, to the idea that what we had was ever real. But the truth, the real truth, it ran far deeper than anything she had imagined. Let me explain. 2 years before my father died, he had rewritten his will, not out of fear, but out of foresight. He had watched Lillian grow more entitled, more calculating. She had grown used to living in luxury she never helped build. So when he rewrote the will, he didn't just leave me the inheritance. He left me guardianship of something else, something Lillian didn't even know existed. A trust, not for me, but for her. Yes, my father had created a secret conditional trust in her name. It was a test, a safety net if she ever proved herself worthy. The clause was simple. If Lillian remained faithful and showed genuine loyalty for 5 continuous years without legal or personal misconduct, the trust would release $2 million in properties and assets to her. But if she failed, everything would be revoked, permanently. The moment she forged those documents and tried to drain my fake account, she failed the test. I didn't tell her that when she showed up crying in my doorway. No, I waited, because some truths are best delivered at the breaking point. A week after she left, Lillian tried to get back into our joint home again. This time, she brought tears, flowers, and an apology. She said she wanted to fix things. That Mike had used her, manipulated her, that she wanted a second chance. I let her in. I let her speak. And when she finally said, "George, I made a mistake. I want to be the woman you married again," I smiled. Then I placed an envelope on the table. She opened it. Inside were 2 things. 1, a printed copy of a revoked trust document, voided and signed by my father's legal team. 2, a photo of her and Mike, time-stamped the exact day she made her first fraudulent transfer. Her hands trembled. "What is this?" she whispered. "That," I said, "was your chance. My father saw something in you once. Enough to give you a future, even if you failed me. But you failed both of us. And now, that future is gone." She looked like the ground had been pulled out from under her, because for the first time she realized she hadn't just lost me. She'd lost everything. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my phone, pressed play, and let her listen to the audio recording of the meeting I had with the prosecutor just 3 days ago. Yes, Mr. Adams, with the forged signatures, the transfer trail, and the falsified offshore routing, we can press full charges. Conspiracy to defraud, wire fraud, and attempted estate theft. We'll file charges against both Mrs. Adams and Mr. Thompson. She dropped the envelope. You wouldn't do that. Not to me. You already did it to yourself. I replied. She stood there, shaking, mascara running. Not because she'd been caught, no, because she finally understood the depth of what she'd lost. "You see, When you betray someone who truly loved you, you don't just lose their affection. You lose the version of your life that could have been beautiful. That night, she left. This time for good, but the story's not over. Because what Lillian didn't know was that Mike had already turned on her. The authorities reached out to him before they reached her. And Mike flipped. He gave them everything. Documents, emails, voice notes, proof that Lillian was a mastermind, that she knew about the inheritance protections, that she chose to forge everything. He cut a deal and left her to face the storm alone. The woman who thought she could outsmart a family that built its fortune on decades of grit was now standing in front of it with no shield. And justice was coming. The day the authorities knocked on Lillian's door, I was already out of town. Not to escape, but because I had no more battles left to fight. The war was won. I stood by the window of a quiet cabin my father used to take me to when I was a boy. He'd always say, asterisk, when things get loud, go where it's quiet. That's where you think best. Asterisk. Lillian must have thought she could still spin her way out of it. Cry a little, play the victim, act like she was misled by Mike. Maybe she thought she could flash her eyes and the world would fall back in line. But no charm works in a courtroom, and no tears undo a paper trail. I got the first call from my lawyer 2 days after her arrest. She's been formally charged, George. Multiple counts. Fraud, forgery, conspiracy, wire fraud. The DA is pushing hard. I didn't ask about her bail. I didn't ask if she cried. I only asked one thing. Did she try to blame me? My lawyer chuckled softly. She did. But the evidence is overwhelming. And Mike's full confession crushed whatever defense she might have had. I nodded. That's all I needed to know. You see, betrayal doesn't start with a single act. It begins with tiny moments. The lies you excuse, the red flags you wave off because love blinds you. It begins when trust is taken for granted, when loyalty becomes a currency that only flows one way. Lillian made her choices, and now she was standing in the ruins of them. I didn't show up for the hearing. I had no reason to. It wasn't revenge anymore. It was justice, plain and simple. But my lawyer did. He sat in the front row of the courtroom, watching as she sat in handcuffs beside Mike. He told me later she looked broken, not the confident, manipulative woman who stole money and played the grieving wife. No, she was pale, disoriented, cold. The judge read the charges aloud, and when asked how she pleaded, she hesitated. Guilty, she whispered, not because she wanted to, but because fighting the evidence would have only dragged her deeper into the pit she dug herself. Mike got a deal, 2 years in a minimum security facility with parole after 10 months. Lillian? They weren't as lenient. She was sentenced to 5 years. And maybe in the grand scheme of things, 5 years isn't forever. But for someone who built her identity on appearances, luxury, and control, 5 years is a lifetime, especially when you're forgotten, because that's what happened next. I changed my number, sold the house, moved everything under new legal entities. She tried to write me from jail. 3 letters. I never read them. I gave them to my lawyer and said, burn them. There was nothing she could say that would matter anymore. No apology, no confession, no memory would ever make me see her the same. But here's the part one haven't told you yet. The real twist. The final piece of the puzzle she never saw coming. Lillian didn't just lose the money, the house, or her freedom. She lost something far more precious. She didn't know that the week she forged my signature, she was already being watched by someone else. My father didn't just leave behind legal protections. He left behind a witness. Someone Lillian never knew about. And that witness is about to reappear. Because the story isn't ending yet. It's about to come full circle. The witness. That's what I said, didn't I? The one Lillian never saw coming. The one who had been watching her long, before I even had an ounce of suspicion. Let me explain. Before my father passed, he wasn't just repairing legal documents or shifting trusts. He was also quietly testing the people around me, especially Lillian. He never trusted her. Not fully. He told me once, asterisk, George, some smiles are rehearsed. And some people only love you for your peace of mind, not for your storms. Asterisk. So a year before he died, he hired someone, a family friend I hadn't seen in years. Her name was Angela. We grew up together. She was like a cousin to me, though we weren't related by blood. Quiet, brilliant, and sharp as glass. Angela became Lillian's spiritual advisor. That's what she called herself. She met Lillian through a mutual connection, inserted herself gently, and Lillian, hungry for validation and control, let her in. For a whole year, Angela kept tabs, discreetly, without alerting anyone. And when my father passed, she didn't stop. She only got closer. After Lillian's arrest, I hadn't spoken to Angela yet. I figured her job was done. But then, one morning at the cabin, I heard a knock at the door. I opened it. There she was, older than I remembered, but still with that same unreadable calm in her eyes. "Angela," I said, stepping aside, "I thought you were long gone." She walked in, placed a thick file on the table, and said, "She was never just stealing your money, George. She was stealing your life." Inside the folder were transcripts of voice recordings, dozens, photos, screenshots of conversations that never made it to the cloud, private meetings Lillian and Mike had in secret locations. But the worst part, the part that made me sit down, was a single video clip. I opened it. In it, Lillian was sitting with Mike, laughing. "Once the money clears, we'll fake a breakup. I'll cry to George, act like I made a mistake, and win his sympathy. Then, once he's lulled, we marry. 6 months, tops. He'll change the trust again. And that's when we finish it. What if he doesn't?" Mike asked. Lillian smirked. "Then I'll finish him." My blood went cold. That wasn't just manipulation. That was premeditated destruction. She wasn't just a thief. She was a predator. And I had almost given her the benefit of the doubt. Angela sat across from me, arms folded. "She was going to destroy you, George. Not just financially, but your legacy, your name, everything your father built." I looked out the window into the still forest beyond, and I realized something I hadn't let myself feel before. Grief. Not for Lillian. Not anymore. But for the version of me that once loved her. That man was gone. The man who stood in his place now, he wasn't vengeful. He was awake. Later that evening, I made one final decision. I called my attorney. "There's a video," I said. "I want it submitted to the court." He hesitated. "George, it'll end any possibility of leniency for her." "I know," I said. "That's the point." He paused and said softly, "Understood." As for Angela, she left the next day. She handed me one last envelope before she did. Inside was a handwritten note from my father. Asterisk if you're reading this, George. Then the storm passed. I knew you'd face it with strength. But never forget, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And when you rise, rise without bitterness. Because dignity is louder than revenge. Asterisk. I folded the letter and held it for a long time. He was right. And Lillian? She was no longer a threat. But she was about to learn that being caught wasn't her real punishment. It was being exposed. To the world. To herself. To everyone who once thought she was innocent. And when that final moment comes, that's when the real silence begins. They say when a person finally sees themselves without a mask, they either shatter or disappear. Lillian didn't disappear. She shattered. The video Angela gave me, the one where Lillian talked about faking a breakup, manipulating me, and finishing me if things didn't go her way, was submitted to court during her sentencing review. It was played aloud, in full. There were gasps in the courtroom, from the gallery. Even the judge's expression shifted. Mike, already behind bars, sat expressionless. But Lillian, she broke. Not with tears, not with rage. She just went still, frozen in the realization that this wasn't some bad dream she could charm her way out of. This was judgment, real and permanent. Her final sentence was extended. 7 years. No parole for at least 4. Her defense attorney tried to appeal, citing emotional distress and manipulation by Mike. But the evidence buried that argument before it could even surface. She wasn't a victim. She was a weapon that turned on her own. And the only thing left for her now was silence. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even tell anyone close to me. Because victories like these aren't for parties or champagne. They're for peace. And peace doesn't need an audience. I returned to the cabin. Same one where this all began to unwind. I walked into the woods alone, holding my father's letter in my hand. I read it again, slowly, and let the wind carry those final words through the trees. When you rise, rise without bitterness. That's what I did. I didn't track her name online. Didn't follow updates from the prison. Didn't need to see what became of Mike. Because the truth is, when you've already won by walking away whole, the rest of it is noise. But Lillian wasn't forgotten. No, I made sure of that. Not for revenge, but for reminder. Her case made quiet headlines, small ones, in the state law journals and legal ethics blogs. The story of a wife who tried to defraud her husband out of an inheritance and got caught in her own web. I authorized the story, not with her name, never publicly, but with the details, the betrayal, the planning, the fall. It was published under a title I chose myself, Echoes of a Golden Cage. I wanted her to hear that echo from wherever she was, to know that the world didn't see her as a misunderstood woman who made a mistake, but as someone who lost everything, not because she was unlucky, but because she was unworthy. As for me, I moved, not to run, but to begin. I bought a small house on a hill overlooking a quiet lake. I opened a small consultancy firm. Nothing like my father's empire. Simpler, honest, just me and the work. And sometimes Angela visits. We don't talk about Lillian anymore. We talk about the future, about healing, about the quiet victories that don't make headlines. You know, if I've learned anything from all of this, it's that betrayal doesn't define you. It reveals others. It tests your backbone. It burns away illusions and leaves you face to face with truth. And once you survive that fire, no one can ever hurt you the same way again. So to Lillian, wherever she is, if she ever hears this story, let her know I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm just free. And in the end, that's the best revenge of all.